bird flu update. So this is gonna be a little bit of a long video, so just to let you know. But we're gonna start in New York. So there has been increasing disease concerns for bird flu in New York. So this article focuses on Catherine Quayle, who's been caring for sick and injured wild animals in New York for the past 12 years. She was a volunteer at Wild Bird Fund, the city's only wildlife rehabilitation center, and now as the NGO's communications director and licensed rehabber. So she's saying despite all her experience, she's stunned to see what she's seeing in her clinic lately, which she deals with viruses on a day-to-day basis, but nothing like this. They're saying for the past 4 years, the fund has been dealing with a rising tide of suspected highly pathogenic influenza cases and operating in triage mode. So they're setting up isolated areas, adopting new H5N1 virus protocols, and relying on protective gear and regular testing. They're saying people call us every day about sick and dying birds, about Canada geese especially. I've noticed that this season, Canadian geese, vultures, and crows and cranes are the most affected this season. So they're saying at this point, it's pretty safe to assume that highly pathogenic avian influenza could appear anywhere in New York at any time. And just to remind you, if you don't remember, they found in Washington and another study that mice carry bird flu. They found 6 mice carrying bird flu in Washington, where the patient died of H5N5. It wasn't correlated, but it was in the same state, in the same county. So, New York is filled with rats. So, she also held a webinar addressing mounting concerns about the surge, where we were all hoping, like other avian influenzas, we might see it for a couple years and it would disappear, but it doesn't seem to be the case. They're saying this has been the longest and the hardest bird flu cases, I guess, that they've had. We've been having this since 2021, 2022. So it's been a long time. So this is the strain that they've been most worried about. It's the 2.3.4.4b. India spoke about this either last year or the year prior, that this was one mutation away. And Japan jumped on that. Germany said it too. Italy and France also said that. So in just 4 years, H5N1 strain of highly pathogenic avian influenza has swept the globe pole to pole. And as of December 2025, the virus has infected 598 bird species and 102 mammals. There have also been 990 human infections globally, including 71 in the United States, though the virus has yet to achieve major spillover to humans. We've had 2 deaths here in the United States. So the first one was January 2025, which was the Louisiana patient. And then we had another death, which was a huge thing. People kept saying it was the first avian influenza case. It was not. It was the first H5N5 case, which makes a big difference, and it changes the language because it's saying that it is evolving, it is mutating, and it's getting better. So in Wisconsin, they proposed legislation aimed to create buffer zones around commercial egg farms to prevent spread of viruses, and it was vetoed. So apparently the bill was to allow Department of Natural Resources to sell land near commercial egg farms to create buffer zones and prevent the spread of avian flu. DeChow said the recent outbreak at one of the nation's largest egg facilities in Jefferson County has had significant impacts on businesses, workers, and surrounding communities. They're saying avian flu outbreaks at large-scale commercial poultry farms or facilities can have devastating economic and community consequences, leading to mass depopulation of birds. So creating buffer zones around these farms is seen as a potential way to mitigate the spread of the virus from wild bird population. So what DeChow said, something has to change. While I am disappointed in the veto, I remain hopeful that the DNR, the farm owners, and local officials can work together to find a solution to prevent this from happening again. How about we admit that we have a problem at a state, federal, global level, and we get this under control? So what's next? So the governor's office has not indicated if it plans to work with the legislator on fixing this or figuring this out. I truly don't think that this is going to make a difference because bird flu is airborne. It travels in dust. So if you have a buffer in between, like, how good is it going to be? I don't know. I guess they have to do it and see if it does work. And then another article came out saying H5N1 bird flu cases among U.S. farm workers trigger expanded federal surveillance push. As of the first week of April 2026, the United States has recorded a rise in clusters of confirmed H5 avian influenza infections in humans. States has recorded a rising cluster of confirmed H5N1 avian influenza infections in humans, the overwhelming majority linked to direct animal contact on dairy and poultry farms, prompting the CDC to announce a significant expansion of its national surveillance infrastructure. The move comes after months of incremental cases reporting that public health officials say no longer reflects the true scale of exposure risk among agriculture workers. I don't know if you remember me talking about this, but California is being sued because in 2024, they declared an emergency state and they were not releasing correct information on bird flu, like proper PPE, what farms were being affected, what animals were being affected, what were the symptoms. And on top of that, agriculture workers, which we know are 70% of them are immigrants that do not speak English, were not being told that animals had bird flu, like cows and chickens, and they were not given proper PPE, and they were giving Zoom meetings for education. We know that these people, for sure, do not have internet, do not have anything to even go online and go on Zoom, and they don't know English. So how are you going to teach these people that there's bird flu if you're not telling them they have bird flu, you're not giving them the proper equipment, and you're not educating them? It doesn't make sense, but they're being sued for that now. So the CDC, in coordination with the USDA in California, Michigan, Texas, and Colorado, confirmed this week that updated testing protocols and on-site monitoring teams will be deployed to operations where infected livestock have been identified. So more than 100 dairy herds across the country has tested positive for H5N1 in early 2026, a figure that has continued to evolve as sampling coverage improves. Poultry operations have faced even broader disruptions, with tens of millions of birds culled under USDA protocol since the outbreak escalation. So I know that in the last 30 days, only the United States has depopulated 10 million birds. 10 million in 30 days. That's not counting the beginning of January. And I know globally, we have 3 people in Cambodia having bird flu. We've had the first Italian person having bird flu. So this is Italy's first bird flu case. And Taiwan is having also bird flu. They had their first bird flu local case, like acquired locally. So infectious disease specialists have been largely consistent in their near-term risk assessment while flagging structural vulnerabilities in the United States response framework. So this is for high exposure individuals. Use PPE when handling sick or dead animals. Report symptoms. We're going to talk about symptoms really quick, but eye redness, which is pink eye or conjunctivitis, fever, cough, or sore throat following animal exposure should be reported to a healthcare provider immediately, who would initiate antiviral treatment. Participate in voluntary serology studies. This is what I don't understand though. Like, we're testing people, but we're not subtyping people. So we've had influenza A, which bird flu is a subtype of, but we're not subtyping. Does that make sense? So remember that eye redness, right? This article came out January 15th, which I talked about. Renown warns of increased influenza cases linked to pink eye and ear pain. I know I'm not Einstein, right? I'm not a rocket scientist, but H5N1's most common case or symptom so far has been pink eye, especially among cattle workers. And we've seen an increased risk and increased linked to pink eye with influenza cases. Like, can anyone do math and can anyone have common sense to what's going on? So back to this article. So the broader pandemic preparedness dimension. It says, beyond the immediate outbreak, the H5N1 situation has reignited a policy debate about the United States pandemic preparedness infrastructure, which we don't have. Specifically, the speed and scalability of domestic vaccines manufacturer capacity, which Biden gave 2 billion to Moderna, and then Trump took it away. I'm not saying Trump is worse than Biden, because Biden also did not do well with this response either, because this has been going on since 2021, 2022. I've been reporting on bird flu for 3 years. I wanted to take a step back, but I can't, because I cannot keep this to myself, because they're not talking about this. And you need to know about this. If you have stayed this long, thank you. As I always say, stay safe, stay updated. And as I used to say, follow to stay in the know.